The translation device failed 3 times before Ambassador Nira Okonkwo realized the problem was not technical. The Galactic Assembly had simply stopped breathing. She stood at the central podium of Station Meridian, surrounded by representatives of 400 species, and watched as every human in the vast chamber received the same emergency alert. The sound cut through her presentation like a blade through silk. Around her, alien delegates shifted in confusion, their various appendages and sensory organs turning toward the frozen humans. Nira read the message on her device. Then she read it again. The words did not change. Hero swarm detected. Convergence trajectory confirmed. Target, Earth, estimated arrival, 72 hours. This is not a drill. Across the chamber, human delegates began to weep. Some fell to their knees. Others simply stared at nothing, their faces empty. Nira felt her own tears building, but she forced them back. She was the voice of humanity here. She could not break, not yet. The arbiter of the assembly, a towering crystalline being named Salith, activated the translation grid. Ambassador Okonkwo explained this disruption. Nira's voice came out steady, though she did not know how. Arbiter, I must inform this assembly that Earth has been targeted by a Hero swarm. Our homeworld will be destroyed within 3 days. Silence fell again, but this time it carried weight. Every species in the galaxy knew what the Hero meant. The ancient machine swarm had consumed 17 civilizations across recorded history. No world had ever survived a full convergence. The machines did not negotiate, they did not slow, they simply devoured everything and moved on. A delegate from the Villani Imperium rose. Counselor Tereth was old even by his species standards, his blue-gray skin marked with the patterns of 700 years. Ambassador, surely your fleet will withdraw to your colony worlds. The Hero cannot be fought, this is known. Nira looked at him. She thought of her grandmother's house in Accra, of the smell of rain on red earth, of 12 billion people waking up to their last week of life. Counselor, humanity will not withdraw. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Teretha's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. You cannot mean to fight. The mathematics of the Hero are absolute. Your entire fleet would delay them by hours at most. Hours that will allow 3 million civilians to evacuate. Nira stepped forward. The rest of our people have chosen to stay. Our military has chosen to stand. We know we cannot win. We have made our peace with that. The Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with pale light. You are describing species-level suicide, Ambassador. The assembly does not understand. Nira smiled, though her heart was breaking. No, I suspect you do not, but perhaps you will. She activated her personal communicator and connected to Fleet Admiral Kwame Asante, who stood on the bridge of the flagship unconquered in Earth orbit. His dark face filled the holographic display, calm and resolved. Admiral, the assembly is watching. Do you have a message for them? Asante nodded once. I do. He looked directly into the projection, addressing not just the chamber but the entire galactic network that carried the assembly's proceedings. To all who receive this transmission, I am Fleet Admiral Kwame Asante of the United Earth Defense Force. In 72 hours, my world will die. My people know this. We have accepted it. He paused. And Nira saw the weight of 12 billion souls in his eyes. We could run, we could scatter to our colonies and let Earth fall. Without resistance, many of us would survive, but we have decided that survival is not the only thing that matters. Some things are worth dying for. Home is worth dying for. The chance to look into the darkness and refuse to kneel, that is worth dying for. Teretha's voice was barely a whisper. Admiral, why? What do you gain? Asante's answer was simple. We gain nothing, we lose everything, but the galaxy will remember that when the Hero came for humanity, we did not hide, we did not beg, we stood in their path and made them pay for every inch of our world in blood and fire. That memory is our gift to you. Perhaps one day, it will matter. The transmission ended. Nira stood alone at the podium, surrounded by hundreds of alien species who had never understood humanity and perhaps never would. Arbiter, she said quietly, I have one request of this assembly. I do not ask for military aid, I do not ask for intervention, I ask only that you watch, bear witness to what happens next, remember us when we are gone. Salith's crystalline form dimmed with something that might have been sorrow. The assembly grants your request, Ambassador. We will watch. Nira bowed her head. In 72 hours, her species would face extinction. In 72 hours, 12 billion people would die, but they would not die forgotten. They would not die alone. and perhaps, in the end, that was enough. She walked out of the chamber without looking back. There was nothing more to say. Now there was only the waiting, and the watching, and the end of everything she had ever known. The galaxy would remember. She had to believe that. It was all she had left. 48 hours before the end, the first volunteer ships arrived at Earth's defensive perimeter. Admiral Kwame Asante watched them on the tactical display with something close to disbelief. A Villani merchant vessel, 2 Kethare science ships, a Morith deep-water transport that had no business being in open space. One by one, they emerged from hyperspace and took positions at the edge of the kill zone. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the Villani ship is hailing us, they say. They are here to witness. Asante frowned. Witness what? They did not specify, sir, they only said they could not look away. By the time the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, 17 non-human vessels had joined the strange vigil. They were not warships, they carried no weapons that could harm the Harrow, they had simply come to watch humanity die. On the surface of Earth, 12 billion people spent their final days in ways that would later become legend. In Lagos, a street vendor named Adiz continued selling roasted plantains until the power grid failed. When asked why she did not flee to the evacuation centers, she simply shrugged and said that people still needed to eat. In Tokyo, an elderly man named Hiroshi spent 40 hours in his garden, carefully pruning a bonsai tree his grandfather had planted 2 centuries ago. He knew the tree would be ash within days. He tended it anyway. In Sao Paulo, a children's hospital refused to close. The doctors and nurses stayed with their patients, reading stories and holding hands, knowing that no evacuation ship would come for the sick and dying. Counselor Tereth watched these scenes from his flagship, the recordings transmitted by human news networks that continued broadcasting even as the sky darkened with approaching death. He had lived 700 years, he had seen civilizations rise and fall, he had never seen anything like this. They are not panicking, he said to his aide, a young Villani named Sira. Why are they not panicking? Sira had no answer. The humans on the screens laughed and cried and held each other. They gathered in public squares and sang songs that the translation software could not properly render. They looked up at the stars that would soon be blotted out, and they did not run. In orbit, Admiral Asante assembled his fleet. 700 warships formed layered defensive spheres around the planet. They were hopelessly outmatched. The Harrow swarm contained an estimated 4 billion individual units. The math was simple. The math was death. Asante addressed his crews one final time. In a few hours, we will engage an enemy we cannot defeat. Many of you will die. All of us may die. I will not pretend otherwise. He paused, looking at the faces on his screen, young and old, scared and determined, human in all the ways that mattered. But I want you to understand something. We are not dying for nothing. Every minute we hold them, another transport escapes. Every ship we destroy is one less that will hunt our children. We are buying time with our lives. There is no greater purchase. The fleet acknowledged. There were no grand speeches in return, no dramatic last words, just quiet acceptance and the hum of engines powering weapons that would fire until they melted. The Harrow arrived at sunset. They came from the darkness between stars, a tide of metal and hunger that blotted out the light. The first wave contained 200 million units, scout drones, each one the size of a human fighter. Behind them came the harvesters, vast machines designed to strip a planet to its core. Behind those came something worse, the convergence mind, the central intelligence that directed the swarm, a structure so large it bent light around its edges. Asante watched them come. He thought of his daughter, safe on an evacuation ship bound for New Accra. He thought of his wife, who had refused to leave, who stood now in their garden in Nairobi, watching the same sky. All batteries, he said quietly. Commence firing. The night exploded. 700 human warships opened fire simultaneously, pouring energy and metal into the approaching swarm. The first wave of scouts evaporated. The second wave followed. For one brief, glorious moment, it seemed like they might actually hold. Then the harvesters returned fire. The destroyer Relentless vanished in a ball of plasma. The carrier Indomitable lost its port flight deck and kept fighting. Ships died by the dozen, their crews burning in the vacuum. And still the humans held the line. On his flagship, Counselor Tereth watched with tears streaming down his ancient face. 3,000 years ago, his people had faced the same choice. They had run, they had survived, they had carried the shame ever since. Sira, he whispered, are you recording this? Every moment, Counselor, Good, he could not look away. The galaxy needs to see this. The galaxy needs to understand what it means to stand. The battle raged, the evacuation continued, and Earth's final night burned with the light of humanity's last defiance. The girl's name was Amara, and she was 11 years old when she became the voice of a dying world. She sat in a shelter beneath Nairobi, surrounded by 300 other children and a handful of adults who had stayed to care for them. The walls shook with distant explosions, the lights flickered with each impact, but the communication equipment still worked, and Amara had found a camera. "Hello," she said to the lens, not knowing that her transmission was being picked up by every relay. "Station in the sector, my name is Amara, I am in a shelter under my school. The adults say the bad machines are coming, but they also say our soldiers are fighting very hard. I can hear the fighting, it sounds like thunder that never stops." In the assembly hall on Station Meridian, 900 billion sentient beings watched a human child describe the end of her world. "My mother told me to be brave," Amara continued. "She is a nurse at the hospital, she said she has to stay with her patients. Because that is what nurses do, I understand, I am trying to be brave too." Above her, in the burning sky, Admiral Asante's fleet was dying. The flagship Unconquered had taken 17 direct hits and was still fighting. Her main batteries were gone, her engines were failing, but her point defense systems continued to fire, swatting down Hero drones by the thousands. Every second she survived was another second of evacuation time. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "the final convoy is away. 3 million civilians have reached hyperspace." Asante closed his eyes. 3 million, out of 12 billion, it was not enough, it would never be enough, but it was something. "Signal the fleet," he said, "Operation Final Dawn, all ships, weapons free, make them pay." The human warships abandoned formation and charged directly into the swarm. It was suicide, and they knew it, and they did it anyway. The destroyer Swift Justice rammed a harvester, detonating her reactor core inside the machine's hull. The cruiser Defiant flew into the heart of a drone cluster and self-destructed, taking 10,000 units with her. One by one, human ships died in fire and light, each one a wound in the Hero's endless body. On the surface, the ground war had begun. Hero landing craft descended on every continent. The machines did not take prisoners, they did not negotiate. They simply began disassembling everything they touched, buildings, vehicles, people, converting matter into raw materials. For the swarm, in Beijing, the 14th Defense Regiment held a refugee corridor for 6 hours. When their ammunition ran out, they fixed bayonets and charged. None survived. The corridor held long enough for 2,000 civilians to reach the last evacuation shuttle. In Lagos, the street vendor Adiz organized her neighbors into a resistance cell. They had no weapons, only kitchen knives and farming tools. They harassed Hero scouts until a harvester finally caught them. Her last words, recorded by a news drone, were, "We are not cattle, we choose how we die." In the shelter beneath Nairobi, Amara kept broadcasting. "The ceiling is shaking very much now," she said. "Some of the younger children are crying. I am holding my friend Yusuf's hand. He is only 7. I told him that the soldiers are still fighting, and that is true, I think. I can still hear the thunder." Ambassador Okonkwo watched from Station Meridian, tears streaming down her face. Around her, alien delegates sat in stunned silence. The Kethare were clicking their mandibles in what their translator identified as grief. The Morith had turned their tanks opaque, unable to watch but unable to leave. Even Counselor Tereth, who had seen civilizations fall, could not speak. "I want to say something," Amara continued, looking directly into the camera. "I want to say thank you. My teacher told us that beings from other worlds are watching. If you are watching, thank you. My mother says that when people remember you, you do not really die, so please remember us, remember that we were here, remember that we were not afraid." The ceiling above her cracked. "I have to go now," Amara said. "Goodbye." The transmission cut to static. In orbit, Admiral Asante's flagship finally fell. He stood on the ruined bridge as the reactor overloaded, his eyes fixed on the planet below. "We held them," he whispered. "We held them as long as we could." The explosion was visible from the surface, and then, at 0347 Galactic Standard Time, every human transmission from Earth went silent. The news feed stopped, the emergency broadcasts ended, the desperate calls for help faded into nothing. The silence spread across the galaxy like a wave of cold water. Earth was gone, humanity had fallen, and 900 billion witnesses would never forget what they had seen. 6 months after Earth died, the galaxy went to war. The Earth-packed fleet assembled in the shadow of a dead star, 4,000 warships from 400 species, united for the first time in galactic history. They had come to defend the Valani homeworld, the Harrow's next target. They had come to prove that humanity's sacrifice had meant something. Ambassador Nira Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship, watching the fleet take formation. Beside her, Counselor Tereth studied the tactical displays with ancient eyes. 3 million survivors, he said quietly, that is all that remains of your species, and yet here you are, preparing to fight again. Nira smiled without humor. We learned something, Counselor. Running does not save you. It only delays the end. If we are going to die anyway, we would rather die standing. The Harrow arrived at dawn. They emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. Billions of units darkening the stars, their harvester. Ships already powering collection beams. The convergence mind pulsed at the center of the swarm, directing the endless tide with cold machine precision. Admiral Sira of the Valani, Teretha's former aide, now commander of the Coalition fleet, gave the order to engage. The battle began. It was different this time. The Coalition fought with coordination the Harrow had never faced. Kethare swarm fighters harassed the flanks while Drath battleships punched holes in the center. Morith vessels deployed interference fields that disrupted Harrow targeting systems, and at the heart of the formation, the remaining human ships, just 47 vessels crewed by survivors who had nothing left to lose, led every charge. But the Harrow adapted. They always adapted. For every drone destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Coalition was holding, but they were not winning. Then space itself tore open. The ships that emerged were unlike anything in galactic records. They were vast beyond comprehension, each one larger than a moon, their hulls inscribed with patterns that hurt to look at. They moved through normal space as if it were water, ignoring physics that should have been absolute. The Harrow stopped. For the first time in recorded history, the swarm hesitated, the convergence mind's pulse faltered, and then a transmission cut through every frequency in the system. We are the architects. We created the Harrow 7 million years ago as mining tools. We lost control. We have searched ever since. For those willing to oppose our mistake, the voice was neither warm nor cold. It simply was, we found you. We watched your world burn. We watched your people choose death over surrender. In 7 million years, no species has ever made that choice. Nira stepped forward. What do you want? To give you what you earned. The transmission carried data, schematics, frequencies, codes. These are the Harrow's shutdown protocols. We could have used them ourselves at any time. We chose not to. We wanted to find someone worthy of inheriting the galaxy. Someone who understood that some things matter more than survival. You taught that lesson to 900 billion beings. That is enough. The codes activated. Across the star system. Across the entire galaxy, the Harrow went silent. Drones fell. Still, harvesters powered down. The convergence mind flickered once and died. An ancient nightmare ended in a single moment. The architects did not stay. They left as quickly as they had come, vanishing into spaces between dimensions that no galactic species could follow. But before they departed, they transmitted one final gift, terraforming technology capable of restoring Earth over the next 3 centuries. On the anniversary of Earth's fall, Ambassador Nira Okonkwo stood on the barren surface. Where Lagos had once thrived, around her, representatives from every species in the galaxy observed a moment of silence. Above her, the first atmospheric processors hummed to life, beginning the long work of resurrection. She knelt and pressed her palm to the dead soil. Somewhere in her pocket was a small container of seeds, the last of her grandmother's garden, saved from the evacuation ships. We did not fall alone, she said to the billions who had died, and we will not rise alone. She planted the first seed. The galaxy would never forget the day Earth fell silent. They would tell stories of human soldiers charging into impossible odds. They would sing songs of children who refused to be afraid. They would teach their children that courage was not the absence of fear, it was the choice to stand anyway. And in standing, humanity had changed everything. The seed was small, the work ahead was long, but for the first time in 6 months, Nira Okonkwo looked up at the stars without grief. Earth would live again, and the galaxy would remember why. 3 days after Earth died, Ambassador Nira Okonkwo walked into the assembly hall and found 400 species waiting in absolute silence. She had not slept. she had not eaten, she had spent the past 72 hours on a refugee ship, surrounded by 3 million survivors who had lost everything, their families, their homes, their world. She should have been broken, she should have been empty. Instead, she was something else entirely, something harder, something that would not bend. The Arbiter spoke first. Ambassador Okonkwo, the Assembly offers its condolences. The loss of Earth is a tragedy beyond. I did not come for condolences, Nira interrupted. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. I came to finish what we started. You watched us die, now I need to know, what did you see? Silence stretched across the chamber, then Counselor Tereth rose. His movements were slow, heavy with age and something deeper. I saw courage, he said. I saw 12 billion people face extinction without surrender. I saw soldiers die for strangers. I saw children comfort each other in the darkness. He paused, his 4 eyes glistening. 3,000 years ago, the Harrow came for my world. We ran. We told ourselves it was wisdom. We told ourselves survival was everything. His voice cracked. We lied. We have carried the shame ever since. Your people showed us what we should have been. Other voices followed. The Kethare High Speaker clicked forward. We watched your medical workers stay with their patients. We watched your teachers stay with their students. We have no word for this in our language. We are creating one. The Morith delegation surfaced in their tanks. We recorded the final hours of your Admiral Asante. His sacrifice destroyed a Harrow command node. Our scientists estimate he saved 40,000 lives on the evacuation ships. We have declared him an honorary current bearer of our people. One by one, they spoke. Species that had never offered aid to anyone pledged resources to the human survivors. The Cold and Logical Synthesis Collective offered computing power to preserve human cultural archives. The warlike Drath hegemony offered military escorts for refugee convoys. Even the isolationist void dwellers, who had not addressed the assembly in 9 centuries, transmitted a single message. We remember. Nira listened to all of it, her face still and calm. When the offers of aid finally ended, she spoke again. The Harrow will not stop with Earth. You know this. In 300 years, they will reach the Vellani homeworld. In 500, the Kethare colonies. In 1,000, the core systems themselves. What happened to us will happen to all of you, unless something changes. The Arbiter's crystalline form flickered. What are you proposing? Ambassador. I am proposing that we stop running. I am proposing that the galaxy learns from what we did. Not the dying, but the standing. 12 billion humans chose to fight because they believed some things are worth more than survival. If we were right, then the galaxy has a choice to make. Counselor Tereth stepped forward. The Vellani will stand. We should have stood 3,000 years ago. We will not make that mistake again. The Kethare speaker followed. The swarms of Kethare will stand. The Morith, the Drath, the Synthesis Collective. One by one, they pledged. For the first time in galactic history, the Assembly voted unanimously for unified military action. They called it the Earth Pact. As the session concluded, a young aide rushed into the chamber and handed the Arbiter a data crystal. Salatha's form flickered through several colors before stabilizing. There has been a transmission, the Arbiter announced. Origin, the Galactic Core. It is addressed to humanity specifically. Nira felt something cold move through her chest. Play it. The message filled the chamber, a sequence of mathematical patterns that the translation system struggled to decode. When they finally succeeded, the words were simple. We observed, we remember, we come. The signature matched no known civilization. The signal strength suggested technology far beyond anything in galactic records. And the trajectory indicated that whatever had sent it was already on its way. Nira stared at the decoded message, her mind racing. For 3 days, she had believed humanity's sacrifice was its own reward, a final act of defiance that would echo through history but change nothing. Now she was not so sure. Arbiter, she said slowly, I think our dying may have accomplished more than we imagined. The galaxy waited. Something was coming, and for the first time since Earth fell silent, Ambassador Nira Okonkwo allowed herself to feel something she had thought was gone forever. Hope.